Helping Barron Trump cost her a job, but what she gained was beyond her wildest dreams. Emma Carter never dreamed of working in a diner at 23 years old with a psychology degree collecting dust in her cramped studio apartment. She once envisioned a life helping others, perhaps counseling young people through some of the worst times of their lives, but life, as it often does, had other plans. Bills accumulated quicker than opportunities did, and the Cherry Hill Diner in downtown Des Moines became her lifeline. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep the lights on and her fridge somewhat stocked. Her days blurred by in a clinking of dishes, coffee refills, and tired smiles. Emma had gotten used to the regulars, Mr. Henderson, who always requested extra bacon, or the young couple who shared a milkshake every Friday night. The diner had its charm, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was treading water, waiting for anything to change. One late afternoon, the usual rhythm of the diner shifted. A black SUV pulled up outside, and two men in sharp suits stepped out, flanking a tall, lanky teenager who looked awkward in the way only teenagers could. As they entered, the chatter in the diner quieted, heads turned, and whispers started. Emma glanced at the trio, recognizing the young face from the news, but she didn't react. Instead, she tightened her apron and approached their booth with her usual politeness. The boy, Barron Trump, seemed to be uncomfortable under the weight of everyone's stares. His shoulders were hunched, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his jacket. The men with him whispered something, glancing around the room like hawks scanning for predators. Emma could sense the boy's discomfort, the quiet anxiety written across his face. "Hi there," she said softly, her voice calm and unassuming. "What can I get for you today?" Barron glanced up, his expression guarded but grateful for her neutrality. He mumbled an order, just a soda, and she nodded without missing a beat, jotting it down before disappearing to the kitchen. Emma wasn't one for fanfare, and she certainly wasn't about to treat him any differently than any other diner patron. But murmurs spread throughout the room, and phones went up discreetly to snap a picture or take a video. Emma came back with his drink and set it down in front of him softly. "You call if you need anything," she said with a small, kind smile. His shoulders relaxed just a little bit. The men with Barron shared a look and motioned for him to come sit in one of the booths farther back and off to the side. Emma saw how Barron hesitated with a clear reluctance and didn't give it a second thought before stepping in. "That's the quietest booth we have. I can ensure no one bothers you there," she said, pointing to the far corner and away from prying eyes. The men, however, continued to look at her skeptically but seemed to relent. Nodding, Barron went to the corner booth, where Emma quickly brought him a fresh drink and came back to make sure the blinds were drawn just enough to block any outside cameras. For the next 20 minutes, Emma kept a close eye on the situation. Some patrons grumbled about losing their view, but Emma didn't care. She focused on making sure Barron felt as normal as possible. By the time they left, he gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod of thanks. She smiled back as though to say, "You're welcome." But Emma couldn't have known that her simple act of kindness was about to change everything. The shift ended like any other. Emma untied her apron, her fingers aching from the constant rush of the day. She collected her tips, a meager pile of crumpled bills, and stuffed them into her wallet, which had holes worn out through the thin material. Whispers about the visit of Barron Trump filled the air, but Emma just shrugged. The boy was another customer to be treated like a human being. That's all. It had been late by the time she arrived at home, where fatigue had deepened into the bones. The studio apartment felt lonely in a way that it hadn't in weeks. There was one bulb lit up, and that only illuminated the second-hand couch and a small table where a half-finished puzzle sat untouched for weeks. Emma dropped her bag by the door and collapsed onto the couch, replaying the day in her mind. The next morning she walked into the diner like clockwork. The room was filled with the usual hum of morning chatter and clinking plates, but something was off. Her manager, a wiry man named Greg with a perpetual frown etched into his face, stood near the counter. He was talking in hushed tones with a man in a suit, one of Barron Trump's security detail. Emma's stomach sank. She didn't know why, but something about Greg's expression felt wrong. The moment the man walked out of the room, Greg called to her, his voice sharp. "Emma, my office now." She quickened as she followed him. The office was small with the smell of stale coffee and printer ink, old motivational posters plastered on its walls. He motioned her to sit down but didn't wait for her to settle as he began to speak. "What were you thinking yesterday?" he snapped, his voice low but biting. "Thinking about what?" Emma asked, genuinely confused. "Don't play dumb," moving that boy to the corner booth, drawing attention to the place. It was reckless. "This is a business, Emma, not a circus." Emma's heart pounded. I wasn't trying to draw attention. He looked uncomfortable, so I helped him find a quieter spot, that's all. Greg leaned back in his creaky chair, shaking his head. We've had calls all morning. People wanting to know if Barron Trump was here, reporters asking for details. That's not what we are. We're a diner, not a freak show. She gazed at him in amazement. You're serious? I was only trying to be helpful. That's not the point, Greg snapped back. This kind of publicity is bad for business. I can't have this kind of distraction. The words that followed hit her like a punch to the gut. I'm letting you go, Emma, effective immediately. For a moment, Emma couldn't breathe. Fired over something so trivial? She felt anger rising in her chest but swallowed it back, knowing it wouldn't change. Anything. Undefined. She grabbed her bag, her pride barely intact, and walked out without another word. The cold January air stung her face as she stepped onto the sidewalk, tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away, not wanting to cry in public. She had to think about what was going to happen next. Another job, figuring out how to pay rent, keeping afloat. But as she walked home, the weight of it all pressed on her chest. She had no clue that the universe had other plans in motion, waiting to be revealed in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Emma spent the rest of the day in a haze, feeling the weight of losing her job like a storm cloud over her head. She was sitting on her couch, going through job listings on her old laptop, her fingers quivering with frustration. It seemed every listing required more experience or qualifications than she had. The anxiety bubbled inside, for she was due to pay her rent in less than 2 weeks, and her savings weren't going to take too much of that strain. She couldn't get the fight between her and Greg off her mind. Had she done something so wrong? All she had done was be a little kind. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like she was being punished for doing the right thing. Her anger mixed with hopelessness, creating a knot in her chest that wouldn't loosen. By evening, Emma's phone buzzed. She half expected it to be Greg, maybe reconsidering his decision, but it wasn't. Instead, it was her best friend, Tara. Hey, you okay? Tara's voice was soft, concerned. Emma hesitated before answering. No, not really. I got fired today. What? Tara's outrage was immediate. Emma explained everything, the encounter with Barron Trump, the whispers in the diner, and Greg's reaction. Tara listened quietly, only interrupting herself to mutter words of disbelief. That's insane, Tara said finally. You didn't do anything wrong, Em. If anything, you did something good. That kid probably needed someone to just treat him like a normal person. Emma sighed. Yeah, well, good doesn't pay the bills. For a moment, there was silence on the line. Then Tara said something Emma hadn't expected. You know, sometimes good does pay off, just not in the way you expect. Emma didn't know how to respond, so she simply thanked Tara and hung up. She liked her friend's optimism, but it seemed far-fetched. Life hadn't exactly been throwing her many lifelines lately. Hours ticked by, and Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life was unraveling. The next morning, she woke up to the harsh light of day streaming through her window, her head pounding from the restless night. Another uncertain day lay in front of her. By evening, just at the time that Emma was going to pawn off her laptop just to get fast money, it rang. She did not recognize the number, a long one with too many numbers to be any local number. She hesitated for a moment as she hovered the thumb over the screen. Hello, she said in a cautious manner. Is this Emma Carter? Came a calm professional voice. Yes, who's this? She replied, her suspicion evident. My name is Helen Marks, the woman said, her tone steady but warm. I'm calling on behalf of someone who was at the diner yesterday. They were impressed with your kindness and wanted to discuss an opportunity with you. Emma froze, gripping the phone tighter. Wait, what? We'd like to meet with you to explain further, Helen continued. Would you be available tomorrow afternoon? Emma's mind was racing. A prank? An elaborate scam? But Helen's voice carried such sincerity that Emma found it almost impossible to let go of it. I guess, Emma stuttered. Where would this meeting be? Helen gave her an address, an office building right in the center of downtown, and a time. We'll see you then, she said before hanging up. Emma sat there, staring at her phone in a daze, this strange mix of hope and fear running through her veins. She didn't know what awaited her at that meeting, but she knew one thing. This could be her chance to turn things around. But risks rarely come with guarantees, and Emma was stepping into a world she didn't really understand. The next day, Emma stood outside the towering glass office building, her nerves stretched thin. Dressed in the only semi-professional outfit she owned, a thrifted blazer and slacks that fit a little too snugly, she felt woefully out of place. The building towered above her, its shining windows reflecting an image of herself that she hardly knew. She took a deep breath and pushed through the revolving doors to approach the reception desk. "I am here for a meeting with Helen Marks," she said, trying to keep her voice steadier than she felt. The receptionist nodded and sent her up to the 14th floor. Emma's heart pounded with each ding of the elevator as it climbed higher and higher. When the doors opened, she stepped into a sleek office space, where a woman in her early 40s with sharp features and an even sharper suit greeted her with a firm handshake. "Undefined, you must be Emma," the woman said, her smile faint but genuine. "Undefined, I'm Helen Marks. Thanks for coming." Emma followed Helen into a glass-walled conference room, growing apprehensive. Seated at the table was a man she did not know, older, with salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet authority. Helen motioned for Emma to sit down before sitting herself beside him. "I'm sure you're wondering why you're here," she started off in a calm, deliberate tone. "Let me explain. Yesterday, this made some person of influence at the diner take notice. She saw how you treated Barron Trump as a human being, not a sideshow attraction. Compassion is hard to find these days." Emma blinked, unsure how to answer. "I just did what felt right," she said finally. Helen exchanged a glance with the man beside her, who gave a small nod. "Exactly," Helen said. "And that's why we're here. Mr. Franklin," she gestured to the man, "is a philanthropist who works closely with several initiatives aimed at supporting young people and fostering kindness in communities. He was at the diner yesterday and witnessed everything. He believes your approach is exactly what his organization needs." Emma's confusion deepened. "I'm sorry, but what does that have to do with me?" Mr. Franklin spoke for the first time, his voice steady but kind. "We're offering you a position, Emma, a chance to work with us, promoting and coordinating programs that encourage the kind of humanity you showed yesterday. It's a full-time role with a salary that I believe would more than cover your immediate concerns." Emma's breath caught in her throat, a job offer out of nowhere. She couldn't process it. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you didn't do it for recognition," Franklin replied. "You did it because it was the right thing to do, and that's exactly the kind of person we need." For a moment, Emma was silent. The weight of the last 24 hours, the firing, the uncertainty, the fear, all crashed over her at once. This was a lifeline, but it felt almost too good to be true. Helen leaned forward, sensing her hesitation. "We don't expect an answer right now. Take a day or two to think about it. If you accept, we'll provide all the details and support you need to get started." Emma nodded slowly, her mind racing. "Thank you," she said finally. "I'll think about it." She left the building in a daze, clutching the business card Helen had given her like it was a golden ticket. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a glimmer of hope. But with hope came doubt, and Emma couldn't help but wonder if she was ready for a change this big. Little did she know, accepting this offer would take her life in a direction she never could have predicted. One that would test her courage and redefine her purpose. That night, Emma sat in her apartment, the business card resting on the table in front of her like a question she didn't know how to answer. She had spent hours weighing the offer in her mind. The opportunity seemed incredible, almost too good to be true, but it also felt intimidating. What if she wasn't cut out for this kind of work? What if she failed? Her thoughts spiraled until she called Tara, her voice shaky but determined. "I need your advice," Emma began, explaining the unexpected meeting and the offer in painstaking detail. Tara listened intently, her response immediate and firm. "Emma, this is a sign. It's been too long since you were waiting for something to change. And here it is. You can't let fear hold you back." Emma grasped the phone tight within her hands as she exhaled heavily. "What if I mess it up? What if they regret giving me a chance?" "Then you'll learn from it," Tara said. "But you won't know unless you try. You've already proven you have the heart for this. Let them see that." Emma had a small wave of calm wash over her. Tara was right, she had been waiting so long for something to happen, and now that it had, nothing was going to stop her anymore. The following morning, Emma called Helen, accepting the offer. Her voice trembled a little as she spoke. Helen's warm congratulations made Emma feel like making the right decision. The following days were a whirlwind. Emma was introduced to the organization's mission and its various initiatives, each aimed at supporting communities through education, mentorship, and kindness-focused programs. Her role involved coordinating local outreach projects, ensuring that resources reached those who needed them most. Though the work was challenging, Emma found herself thriving in ways she hadn't anticipated. She met so many different types of people and learned stories of fight and perseverance, reminding her of why she pursued psychology in the first place. For the first time in a long time, she was able to see how she was actually affecting people's lives. One of her biggest initial projects involved teaming with a local shelter to develop after-school programs for less fortunate children. Emma gave this project all that was in her heart. Overtime at the office, community meetings, making sure that each small detail would turn out right. Launch day had arrived. The children arrived, their faces radiant with joy while exploring new games and opportunities in a brand new package. Standing by the corner of the room, Emma was moved to tears. This was what she had always wanted. To help others, to find herself a part of something bigger than herself. And it all came down to that single act of kindness at the diner. The months passed by, and Emma's story began to spread, inspiring others to find their way toward compassion in their own lives. She received letters and emails from strangers who had heard about her journey, each one thanking her for showing that even the smallest acts of humanity could create ripples of change. But for Emma, her transformation story wasn't for her alone, but for the lessons she picked up along the way. Kindness isn't grand gestures, nor is it about expecting something back. It's just that it's doing what is right, even if no one is watching. And that it has the power to make big impacts in the smallest, most invisible ways. Emma's life had changed because she chose to care, and now she was determined to pay it forward every chance she got. Emma's life had become a testament to the idea that small, selfless actions can lead to extraordinary outcomes. She often marveled, looking back, at how one simple moment, a choice to offer kindness to a stranger, had set her on a path she never could have imagined. The diner, Greg's harsh words, the anxiety of losing her job, everything seemed to be a memory now. She had found a purpose in her work with the organization and was again believing in humanity. She had seen how kindness could change lives, not only for those receiving it but for those giving it. She received a handwritten letter in the mail one day when she was getting ready for her community event. The name made her pause for a moment as she read the envelope. Barron Trump. Emma opened the paper. Her hands slightly shook as she did so. It was very short but really heartfelt. Barron thanked her for treating him like a normal person on that day at the diner, shielding him from all the noise in the world as he needed it most. He wrote of how that one moment had stuck with him and reminded him to live up to simple decency in a judgmental world. She smiled and folded the letter into her desk drawer. It was a small reminder of why she did what she did and the power of choosing compassion over indifference. Emma's journey wasn't without challenges, but it carried a profound message. No act of kindness is ever wasted. Even in moments when the world feels heavy and the reward isn't immediate, those choices matter. They ripple outward in ways we may never see, changing lives, including our own. To all of you watching this story, let Emma's journey remind you, kindness can be life-changing. Next time you see someone struggling, offer a helping hand or a kind word. You never know how far it might go. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to our channel and share this video to spread the message of compassion. Let's make the world a little brighter, one act of kindness at a time.